Well, the Rings of Power has returned for season 2 with 3 episodes that I had the misfortune to watch in some kind of self-imposed better option than stabbing myself in the eyes, watched in one sitting. So let's go through it, shall we? Now, I think to begin with, and I've been trying to think this through in my head how I'm going to go about this, but I think it's important to say that as a child, I loved Star Wars, and growing up with a new Star Wars that became A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, it made a massive impact on my childhood. If you were there and got to see them for the first time at the cinema, you will know what I mean. And, you know, come 1984, 1985, in the aftermath of Return of the Jedi, you know, as I became a teenager, I discovered and got into Lord of the Rings, the world of Middle-earth, and it may not be a surprise, but I favour the fantasy genre to science fiction. I kind of, as I grew up, my tastes grew, and Middle-earth replaced Star Wars. It's something. They're both in here. If I was to have to pick between the two, it would be Middle-earth. You know, I'm quite predictable, I guess, in the characters I love. In the, you know, Luke Skywalker is Star Wars, and Aragorn is the character that speaks to me the most in Middle-earth. Now, if we go forward, because we can skip through the, for the longest time, all we had was the animated Lord of the Rings, half the story. If you were a Lord of the Rings fan, you watched that movie countless times, dreaming of better media, and, it was the longest time before we got the Peter Jackson trilogy. They're not perfect. They're really good, though. They did the best job that can be done for a massive story with splendour and scope. And some of the things I'm going to talk about, Peter Jackson kind of did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, borrowing from the animated Ralph Bakshi version. And thinking about this, it's because they're both adapting the same story. So there's certain shots, there's certain moments, there's certain scenes that you can't really change. And if there's something that works really well, you have to keep it in there and keep true to it. One thing in particular to make light of is like the scene with Gollum when Sam has a go at him, and it's like sneak in. In the animated version, it's perfect. And while in the Peter Jackson version, it's slightly different, it still has the same energy. You still recognise it as the same scene. And it's really difficult to make it difficult when you can see the exact way to make it hit. Particularly the offhand comment once Frodo's like, "Oh, hello, Gollum. What have you been doing? Sneaking." You can't change that. unless you want to change it for the worst, downgrade it, or just not do it altogether. It goes kind of hand in hand what's happened in the last couple of years. Season 1 of The Rings of Power was awful. You know, it's very much the tell me you haven't read anything about Middle-earth without telling me you haven't read anything about Middle-earth. And I lost my shit. You know, it has become the social thing of legend in my social circles that we do not talk about the Rings of Power. Or we talk about the Rings of Power if it is deliberately to poke me and to make fun of it and to make fun of me raging about it. That's kind of softened a little bit. And in some respects, that really softened the impact that The Acolyte had just a few months ago, that I think would arguably be as bad as The Rings of Power or worse. I don't know. I mean, I think really The Rings of Power is worse, because in recognising the two franchises, the things, Middle-earth is the thing I hold closer to my heart, because Star Wars is has become more of a nostalgic thing, and I favour the fantasy genre over science fiction. They are awful, and the thing that separates Rings of Power and The Acolyte really is the fact that Disney have had the common sense to go, this shit didn't fly and it's cancelled. Whereas Amazon have this situation where they've agreed to a 5-season deal. And they've created probably the worst TV show ever. You know, only 35% of the viewing audience actually watched the whole season, watched the finale of season 1. And of that, I would pay, I don't know, a $5 to know how many of those, how much of that 35% or that third of the viewership that actually watched it all were people like me watching it to, you know, out of some loyalty, committed to watching it, and then being people that review it. And I swore I wasn't going to watch season 2. I was done. Time has passed. I've chilled out, gotten a little bit older, had some experiences. And as, you know, whispers in the dark, a rumour from the past began to surface, it was like, no, I'll give it a go. This was before knowing it was going to be 3 episodes. And the fact, you know, it's just like, oh, I want to see how they do Tom Bombadil. Do I want to see how they do Tom Bombadil? Yes, I do want to see how they do Tom Bombadil. However, I know I'm probably going to be bitterly, bitterly disappointed. And Tom Bombadil is, you know, one of those characters I really love for his stupidity, lightheartedness, the fact that he just comes into the story in Lord of the Rings, singing silly songs, does stuff, and leaves it the same way. And I don't have any faith in the showmakers to either can make that bird fly. So that's kind of a pretense into watching the show, or giving season 2 a chance. I mean, it's a Russian roulette game of chance. It really is. You know, I'm waiting to reach the rage level again and to go, no, I'm not going to watch the moment it becomes torturous, I'm gonna have to stop watching it. And the fact that there was 3 episodes to watch, I mean, I started getting bored during the 2nd episode. So the 3rd episode was really tough going. And they've probably done that to beat or to play with the Nielsen ratings. I don't know. I have half a hope, a fool's hope if you like, that in airing those 3 episodes, I think they've got the hangover from season 1. Everything they've got wrong, they've kind of perhaps clumped into these first 3 episodes to get out of the way, and that going into episode 4 we may be more on track with what we should have been getting from episode 1 of season 1. The fact of the matter is they've created this massive foundation that's just sand and will not hold any weight. It is awful. I mean, to begin with, in episode 1 of season 2, we get this Sauron backstory, and it's just lacks imagination and scale, and it's just so poorly done, and becomes laughable because of the black Sauron goo monster. You know, if you are watching this and you're watching other videos about it, you know, you're probably seeing everyone is ripping it to shit because of how laughable it is. And to come out from, you know, your first sequence for season 2 after all the scathing reviews it got for season 1, you're just showing us that you're not really learning or have learned anything, or you've just, you know, you're just completely demystifying the magic that's meant to be in there. You don't understand it. You know, you don't understand who Sauron is. One of the things I found myself doing was making notes, watching the episodes, and I've not done that before, and I'm not going to do it anymore, because I find myself, I'm looking for the mistakes rather than getting slapped around the face by them in a glaring way that's, I don't like what that makes me. Because I want to highlight the flaws in the show, or the issues that are so obvious. I mean, the first thing I've got is the paraphrasing and copying from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. And this is one of those things where Peter Jackson may have done things similar to the animated Lord of the Rings, but as I've said, they are adapting the same story. Rings of Power is a new story. I mean, it's completely new because, you know, they had the Second Age appendices to go by, but decided to throw that out the window and completely disregard it. And we got so much copy and paste, it is absurd and insulting. From, you know, once we get past the Sauron backstory, Galadriel chasing Elrond is as Arwen being chased by the Nazgul in Fellowship of the Ring. when we see Gandalf, not Gandalf, and Nori, it's Sam and Frodo at the start of the Two Towers. Painfully the same. I mean, it's... And like with the Sauron goo monster, there are moments in it that are just laughable. Once they set their trap for Poppy, you know, the rope on the floor that trips her up is just laughable in a it's not funny way. It's like when something is such a joke, laughing at it seems over the top, or, you know, you're laughing at it because it's so bad. It's so... everything. You're just taken out of any momentum that's trying to draw you in. And there's just, you know, a whole bunch of other scenes where they're just borrowing phrases and scenes. It's shocking. How dare they? How dare they? I want to add in, before I go into some of the other points, that it seems to me, even with Rings of Power having its momentum of Season 2 launching, we're probably more interested in the fact that Ian McKellen is interested in returning as Gandalf for the hunt for Gollum. I'm probably seeing more of that and more excitement about that than the Rings of Power Season 2. One of the things I was critical of is how... I don't want to get started on Gil-galad. How everyone, the elves, reacted around the elven rings. It's like, they don't act like the One Ring. You know, the obsession with the ring. It's infuriating. You know, Galadriel remains an utter dick. I mean, there's nothing unlikable about this. Nothing likable about this character. I will say this, there are a couple, I think 2 moments in those first 3 episodes where you get a minor win, a minor moment of elation. But in terms of elation, it's like, you know, a party popper going off when what you really want to do is be trying to resuscitate a dead body with, you know, all the power you can muster. So it's like, oh yay, or yes, you know. And one of those moments is Gil-galad pretty much agreeing to Galadriel's plan, which she thinks she's going to lead, but being told that Elrond is, essentially because Elrond isn't a dick. And Galadriel's face is priceless. It's like, yes, some justice against this horrible, horrible character. And then with Gandalf, not Gandalf, well, this is a scene I've rewatched, and it's satisfying because to defend himself and his half psychotic companions as they're getting attacked by rangers of Rhûn, he creates this dust storm and he can't control it, and the Harfoots get dragged off in it as well, and it's like, yes, they're gone, they're gone. Obviously they're probably gonna come back, but it's just like, oh, at least for the moment they're gone, yes. How did it come to this? Oh, I'm not mad though. I don't think. I mean, it's just... oh, there's just so many things that are inconsistent, you know? Halbrand ingratiating himself with Celebrimbor, it's just like... there's no consistency. Celebrimbor doesn't know that the rings have worked or not. You know, other people have sort of said, well, he doesn't realise, you know, as an elf, you know, the elves are dying by their bullshit mithril plot. But with the rings already have been claimed and put on, that in itself is another joke. He doesn't know that he's no longer dying. He can't feel this thing, this energy that elves are ordinarily, outside of the rings of power bullshit, quite self-aware. And this is part of Sauron's pitch to, you know, buddy up to Celebrimbor. Ultimately, I don't want to... I've rambled on, you know. It's the show remains cumbersome and lethargic. You know, I've given those first 3 episodes a rating of 3.5 out of 10. There's so many more things I could comment on. You know, it's poor. Ironically, if I want to say one hopeful positive that I've kind of alluded to, I think now that Sauron as Anatar has set the pieces up, I'm kind of hoping we might see something that actually resembles what's meant to be going on. It's just, you know, they've chopped down all the trees that would have given them all the story they want to tell. It's bleak because they've, as I've said previously, you know, the Rings of Power, the Second Age, should have been an open goal with a match with, you know, no opposition, and they should have just been able to keep scoring goals. Should have been a no-brainer, easy win, and they decided to do what they've done and insulted the massive fan base that exists for Middle-earth. You know, this is why it's become more exciting to be considering Sir Ian McKellen returning to play Gandalf in The Hunt for Gollum. Or even some excitement over the War of the Rohirrim as an animated feature coming out just before Christmas. You know, that even may have some of its own issues with trying to pitch to a modern and new audience. As with the Acolyte, you know, bringing in new people is good. No one's against that, you know. It's something we do by generation. We share these stories or these films with our children and younger people, and if they like it, they come into it and it grows. And it's the things that are good then flower and grow from that. But if you decide to chop down the forest and go, look at this, we're creating something new, and, you know, all the people that liked to go wandering through those woods go, well, what is this shit? I don't see anything I recognise, anything that honours what was. You lose your fan base. And as with the Acolyte, you know, its ratings were so horrifically low, at least Disney have had the good sense to go, yeah, we can't spend 180 million again plus on, you know, shit. The Rings of Power is the most expensive TV show ever made. Where that money's being spent, I mean, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, there are scenes that are visually stunning. even with season 2. But if the content is poor, you know, it's going to suffocate and die, and people are going to turn off. Do I think I'm going to see through to the finale of season 2? I don't know. I don't honestly know. I'm setting myself my target of I want to see Tom Bombadil, and I really hope he's not just a Luke Skywalker appearance at the end of the Force Awakens type appearance. That's my current marker. I want to see how they do Tom Bombadil, and if they ruin him, I'll be switching off. Probably. Depends how. I mean, there's a chance I'll torture myself and watch all of season 2. You know, it might be I force myself to make sure my demographic isn't included in the season 2 finale, because this is what the studios look at, and you know, 35% for season 1 completed the season, and obviously going into season 2, that percentage resets, because if you still got 100% of the 35%, then you know you got 100% audience. It will be interesting to see what the Nielsen ratings say in, I think it should be about 3 or 4 weeks' time. Obviously, there's the big fudge of 3 episodes to have watched, but even that, it was a slog, and I imagine that's probably turned people off. I'm not raging anymore, it's just sad. You know, I try to think about, I'm not mad at the actors. Some of the actors have had the good sense to, you know, not be in season 2. I suppose that was the 3rd win. I did kind of laugh or cheer that Bronwyn was killed off screen because she's not returned for season 2. You know, I'm not angry. I'm past that. It's more just despair and sadness for something that should have been awesome and brilliant. I'm saying should have been an open goal, just scoring goals left, right, and centre, and they messed it up. And there's no evidence to say that that's changed. We'll see how the second half of the season goes. I mean, with the 3-episode release, after this week's episode, we'll be halfway through the season. So we'll see how it goes. That's kind of my review. 3.5 out of 10. It's more of the same. In some ways it feels like there's some improvements, but in other ways it just feels like it's laughable. I mean, it's laughable. And I don't have the confidence in the production team, the writers, that it will get any better. Anyway, if this is more entertaining than Rings of Power, yay me. If it's not more entertaining than Rings of Power, I need help. Do take care, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.